When we think of the pinnacle of global education, our minds naturally drift to places like Harvard or Oxford. These institutions set the modern standard for academic excellence. But half a millennium before the first stone was even laid at Oxford, a far larger, truly international center of learning was already thriving in India. Founded in the 5th century during the Gupta Empire, this was Nalanda. It was a sprawling, independent city entirely dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge. At its peak, Nalanda housed 10,000 students and 2,000 teachers. That is a highly focused 5-to-1 student-to-teacher ratio, all living together in the world's first fully residential university campus. Scholars walked these grounds from as far away as China, Korea, Persia, and Turkey. They migrated to an ancient global metropolis, built solely for human intellectual progress. Getting inside that metropolis, however, was exceptionally difficult. The vetting process started right at the physical boundary, with a figure known as the Dwarpal, or gatekeeper. This gatekeeper was actually one of the university's most brilliant scholars. His job was to administer a brutal verbal exam on logic, philosophy, and science to anyone trying to enter. Historical accounts from Chinese travelers reveal a ruthless failure rate. 8 out of 10 applicants, many of them brilliant minds in their own home countries, failed at the gates and were forced to turn back. For the few who passed the test, the reward was total intellectual freedom. Education, housing, and food were completely free for all accepted students, funded entirely by the tax revenues of 200 surrounding villages. Inside, the curriculum went far beyond religious dogma. Scholars debated logic, grammar, medicine, and astronomy. The math department was even headed by Aryabhata, the legendary astronomer and mathematician who gave the world the concept of zero. The beating heart of all this research was the Dharmagunja, or the Mountain of Truth. This was a massive 9-story library complex containing an estimated 9 million handwritten manuscripts. But the medium holding all these ideas was inherently fragile. Millions of formulas, philosophical treatises, and surgical texts were inked onto dried palm leaves and wooden strips. The greatest concentration of human knowledge on the planet was gathered in one place, and it was sitting there completely undefended, entirely unprepared for the violent realities of a changing world. By the end of the 12th century, in 1193, a new threat arrived in the region. Bakhtir Khilji was a Turkic military commander rapidly expanding his territory, a warlord accustomed to solving problems strictly with a sword. The catalyst for what happened next was deeply personal. Khilji fell severely ill, and his own military physicians tried everything, but completely failed to cure him. Driven by religious prejudice, Khilji initially refused any treatment from local non-Muslim healers. But as his condition deteriorated, desperation forced him to accept help from Nalanda's head of Ayurvedic medicine, an eminent scholar named Rahul Sribhadra. Khilji laid down an impossible condition. The scholar had to cure him without giving him any foreign medicines to ingest. Sribhadra found a brilliant workaround. He coated the pages of a Quran with an invisible medicinal paste, knowing the warlord would absorb it through his fingertips while turning the pages. The treatment worked perfectly, and Khilji recovered. But instead of gratitude, the warlord was consumed by intense intellectual insecurity. He could not accept that the scholars he considered to be infidels possessed medical science far superior to his own. To erase that superiority, Khilji ordered total annihilation. His forces charged into the peaceful campus, brutally massacring the unarmed monks and scholars who had dedicated their lives to studying there. Then they committed an act of cultural vandalism that still echoes today. They systematically set fire to the towering Dharmagunja library complex. The sheer volume of those 9 million palm leaf and wooden manuscripts meant the fire didn't burn out in a few hours. It raged continuously for 3 agonizing months. The skies over the region turned thick and black with the ashes of ancient science, philosophy, and mathematics. In those flames, humanity lost a massive backup drive of its own history, and India lost an intellectual momentum it would take centuries to recover. In the aftermath of the massacre, the university ruins were slowly swallowed by the earth. For over 600 years, Nalanda lay completely forgotten under mounds of dirt and thick grass. It wasn't until the 19th century that British archaeologists began mapping the area. uncovering the massive brick staircases and foundations of the lost campus. The true turning point for Nalanda came much later. In a 2006 speech, India's former president, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, planted a seed in the public consciousness. He proposed completely resurrecting the ancient institution. That idea quickly gained momentum. Backed by an act of the Indian Parliament and a coalition of 17 Asian nations, a massive international project was launched to rebuild the university near its original site. 17 nations funded the construction, treating the project as a collective diplomatic effort to restore a piece of human history that had been missing for 8 centuries. Today, that vision is a reality. The gates of the new Nalanda University are officially open, bringing global scholars back to the hills of Rajgir after 8 long centuries of silence. Recently inaugurated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the new campus is a modern, net-zero green facility honoring ancient roots while focusing on contemporary research. 800 years after the library was burned to the ground, the campus has returned to its foundations in Rajgir. The history of Nalanda suggests that while an army can level buildings and burn manuscripts, the intellectual tradition they tried to erase eventually found a way back to the surface.